Hi everyone, it's Sloth here. Today we are again with Esper control. So this is one of the strongest decks right now for, I would say, historic. Sphinx Revelation is something you can opt out to Chemistry Insight. If you want to be more standard, I prefer to test this card and I like the results. So this is a typical Esper. So you have removal, you have a few counter spells, Thought Erasure for Surveil and no life loss compared to the Thought size. And we have 3 absorbs and a little Planewalker package. So we have Kaya, Ashiok and Oath of Kaya together with Teferi and Liliana. So this is some of a secondary strategy. It's hard to attack the Planewalker, so sometimes it's good to use the Oath, kill something, then next turn you play the Planewalker, and if they want to remove it, usually they need to add 2 turns on for attacking, then you actually get 2 or 4 life extra, so it helps a lot against aggro matchups. And Kaya is something that needs answer for a lot of decks, so that's the basic. I think let's go to the games and see how it goes. Okay, so this will suggest that the enemy doesn't really have much creatures in the deck. Usually you take it as a only creature, or at least one of the very few. This one is good against Planewalkers. This one is generally quite okay, so I think we go for it. Like, we don't have much blue, and we don't have super anti-control plays, but it's a start at least. This one isn't great draw. So yeah, this seems to be an Esper control as well. So hopefully the enemy has a lot of removal. And at this point I think, like, how important Kaya is. Like, I think she might be important, but do we want to run her into counterspell? We don't really have much to do, and we don't have double blue, so the enemy knows we don't have counterspells. So I think we can at least try him. If he drew it, then so be it, so we tried. Okay. So it's possible he has some kind of removal. Or maybe he didn't draw counter spells. Yeah, so he has the removal. And that's kind of fine. Like, sooner or later this would happen. Okay, and now we have double blue with an instance, so we can go into like proper control game, or at least the enemy will see it this way, because we don't really have any counter spells, but the enemy cannot know it. So let's pretend that we are packed with counter spells, so it slows the game down. And I think our play is to get Liliana in the board, so probably at some point he will play Teferi, then the counter spell or something like this. Okay, so the enemy is going with 1 counter spell. I think whoever plays first loses. We don't have counter spells, but the enemy doesn't know about it. And we bluff very good with Settle the Wreckage. Okay, and finally we have something. So as you can see, the enemy is insanely slow rolling this. We could go for something, we could even go Elspeth Conquers Death. And I think that's what we do. This is risky, but if he counters it, then it's okay for us. And we mostly want it for the resurrection effect. And we keep Mystic Sanctuary because it will be super useful very soon. And we can still go Teferi and counter spell. Okay, so right now we can go with Teferi. And if he counters it, then it's okay, because then we get it from... yeah. And the enemy needed 5 mana for this as well. And we get it from Elspeth with counter spell. That's a strong play. And I think we counter it. We will see. Enemy might have some kind of murderous rider. So of course loyalty counter.
Right on schedule.
And let's draw first. And see what we get.
We need to move quickly.
So Mystic Sanctuary is when we get 3 islands. We have 2, so we just need 1 more. And now is the choice. We can also play Liliana, possibly into counterspell. But if enemy plays Eliminate, it's very possible he doesn't play too many Planewalker remover. I think he plays something, but not much. And we have 2 instant spells that are very good, so let's keep it. And we don't really want to tap out. Okay? So at this point we would use Castle Vantress, and when we survive the main turn with the ferry, like everything is going good. That was very tricky game. Like, this is the idea behind playing Elspeth. I wanted him to counter it, so then we trade Elspeth for like uncounterable Teferi. And we still have counter spells then. Because first we untap, then we have Teferi, and then whatever enemy does, we have full mana to respond. Okay, so we are going with Hello. It would be perfect hand if we went first. That would be such an amazing hand. But it's still good. Not perfect, and it depends what we play against, but it's fine. I think the mass removal was the thing that we needed actually. This one is super scary. Because we cannot remove it right now. So let's go for the next part. I think this one will attack every turn. But if the enemy plays it next turn, what will happen? So then we are hit with 3, then 5, 3, 5, and then we get a lot of damage when we kill those. I think we need to go with Priest of Forgotten God, unfortunately. This one creates just a bit too much pressure. Okay, and this is a good card. So the problem is this won't be attacking, so Settle won't kill it, but Wrath will. So this is actually quite fine with us. But we drew very good, so those were the exactly 2 cards that we needed. And I think we go for a Scanta now, because this will help us to stabilize after we clear the board. And we need to like pace resources because we don't have much more sweepers than this. Okay, and he's attacking with everything. We have double white. We don't have double black, but it's kind of acceptable, I guess. Let's see. It also flips a Scanta, so it's not super worst. We will be at 9. Let's go for Wrath of God. I think that's the play. If he plays Siganta, we need to work with it. Unfortunately, it might actually give him 10 mana, or even 11. So that's something. And this is too slow, like we need some instant thing right now. We might even think about getting hit from Giganta. So yeah, the additional mana will be a problem. And we need to do it right now. It's not worse, it's 4 mana Raska Contempt pretty much. But if we get to 4, we are just a bit too low, and he might first not do anything, and then at the end step we cannot use the Settle, because it's only triggering moment when the enemy is attacking. And I think right now this one is fine. This is a good card. So let's draw it. Not really do anything except it. And flipping Ascanta might come next turn. This is a deck that doesn't run many non-creature things. So let's go with the Veto. More mana efficient would be to use Absorb, but at this point, and we gain life, but at this point we don't super need life. We have 1 island, so this is a tapped land and that's it. So let's bin it, just so we get this land, which is better. Okay, and I think we are starting to get there. And let's go for the Erasure and Absorb, because why not? Land is pretty good, but I think it's not enough. So when we play Ascanta, it's 4 mana. I think we should draw lands anyway. So let's go with this. Especially it's a pain land, so I don't want to pay 2 extra life. Yeah, and as you can see, we still draw it. Okay, so we are in a good situation right now. This doesn't pressure anything. And every single turn that he doesn't draw a card, we get to use Ascanta, which is huge. Like, this is the main thing. And we get Teferi. So Teferi can untap enough lands so we can use Absorb. And this should be game in, I think, 2 turns. And we do not want to play the Painland part. Okay, so we need Absorb mana. And at this point we have Teferi, and the enemy probably has only lands or creature removal, like Claim the Firstborn. So this should be game right now. So we are just waiting for the enemy to scoop pretty much. Okay, so let's think what the enemy can do to bounce into the game. I don't think he can, but if, let's think. First let's remove it, main phase, because then it's 0 mana cost. I think that's something that is keeping his mindset in the game. And now we can have double counter if we really need to. No. That was smart by the enemy to wait for this. So Ascanta and Absorb mana. So we can still use Ascanta at the end step if he doesn't draw any threat. And I think he didn't. Yeah. So 2 turns for Teferi. But we drew very well this game, I must say. Like, drawing all those sweepers was huge, and that what won us the game pretty much. I think this Wrath. Okay, and we are going first. We have Ascanta, we have 1 white mana, and this is probably the enchantment deck, I would guess. So let's go with blue and white, because that's what we have in hand. Yeah, so this is the enchantment version. And we want Ascanta right now. Ashok can be good here, because it disables lures completely. And we might even play it right now. We have double white, so I will take this land. And get Ashok. It makes the enemy a bit more awkward with the plays. And it destroys his deck value. I don't think it will come into play, but it's not something people like. And it will probably save us some HP. It might be even target for Esper. So probably some kind of obsession here. Yeah. So this is something we want to... not sure why, whoops. Okay, and this is okay draw. Like, the Teferi will help us to close the game for sure. And at this point we can swipe everything. And as you can see, after Asher, this helps a ton. We could actually... This was a mistake. I should target ourselves, and it would still exile all the cards from the enemy, but our Ascanta would be bigger. So I think that was a mistake. Okay. So, we have 5 mana right now, and this is what we need to close it. So, let's go.
Trust me.
And we could even try to get rid of this, but given we have Wrath of God, I don't think it's super important. Though it possibly that's what we could do, in case enemy has a lot of buffing. And let's make stops so the enemy thinks we might have an instant remover like Herfra's Act. And let's just see. Okay, so it's 2-2. I think in this situation it was actually better to bounce it, but we will see. Like, worst case we can get Teferi back with Elspeth, so I think we can bounce from this. And how much cards do we have? 5, so Ascanta won't be flipped anyway. So we didn't get punished for not bouncing this.
No more games.
So that's fine for us by a lot. With Wrath, I think we can make the situation under control. And we do not want round for sure. Like, we have enough of those. We will use something. For example, Wrath of God. So at this point we will exile enemy, because it removes some of the cards that they have. So for example, Core was very important. It's 1 less. And we will pay life. We should draw first, but that's not something that would actually make a big difference. And we want to untap. So possibly we can go for Shark. Yeah, it's good game at this point. If you cannot remove Teferi, like, that's too much. Especially with Ascanta, that will get flipped. Okay, so the enemy going first, and we have high mana cards, so I think it's probably very hard to win, but we will try. Yeah, but we don't have double white, so at this point it will probably be aggro as always. So we need to draw cards, or the enemy needs to, like, have a slow hand. Because Absorb on the draw can like counter 4 mana play. And okay, so this is rogues, I guess. So let's play Ascanta. because it will flip insanely fast with rogues, and this is the turn when he cannot counter it with Drown the Rock. And this will also be mana acceleration. And this is a very good card for the matchup. This will be good enough that we don't want to play it really. So I expect a Flash Rogue or Silundi Vision. Silundi Vision. Okay, so that's interesting. It might also be a mill deck. But I'm more inclined to rogues, though I don't think they play this card. Unless this is a version that plays it. Okay, so this seems to be some kind of Demir control, I guess. Which makes me dump this one. This might be game-winning play, so this is something I will be very careful with. I'm not exactly sure what we play against, honestly. Like, normally this would be hardcore Dimir control, but it might be some strange version of different popular deck. Okay, and do we want to land? I think not. Like, we want to flip Ascanta a bit more. And we still get all of this, so it seemed to be correct. The enemy will scry. Oh man, the enemy didn't scry, but he should. So I think that was a big misplay. Okay, and he just plays a land. So let's try to flip Ascanta as soon as possible. I will pay live because that's not very important here. And I also won't play Ashok yet. I don't exactly want to be the first person to play cards. With Ascanta, we don't need to be fast. And tapping out can mean like losing the game. Especially that the enemy doesn't use his main scry engine that he needs for this matchup, so it's even better. And we are playing against Salty Dog. I think I want enemy to counter it. So let's see if he has something. I think he will counter, because that's the big difference between us. I have Ascanta and he doesn't. Yep. And we could counter Sabotage. And how much mana the enemy has? He might have 2, so he might counter something. So let's counter Ascanta. He will get a Surveil, but we for sure will counter the Ascanta, and that's what we need. So it's more of a safe play this way. And it saved him 1 draw. So that's good, like, for him. I guess, like, the more the merrier, yeah? So let's see if the enemy has 2 mana counter spell. And he doesn't. So one way or another we are going with double stops, so we can at least pretend we have what we have. And at this point, let's play the land. And we want Dovin's Veta, because that's the better counter spell. And yep, we want to draw it. This means we won't flip Ascanta next turn, but that's okay. And we want to fake the Absorb for sure. So let's have 3 mana. Like, we have Absorb already. We have a lot of Teferis, and it might not be super easy for the enemy to remove it. And the enemy might play it just to see if there are stops and if we have some counterplay, let's say. Okay, and now we have counterspell again. Okay, so we are in a good spot right now. Liliana is also great, but I think Ashok is better. Just because we can still counter, it costs only 1 mana pretty much, and it demands a lot of answers. I don't exactly know why the enemy isn't using Castle Vantress. I think he forgot about it, which is quite huge. Okay, that's interesting play. And he can use something from the graveyard. So we cannot counter this one. And what would happen if we counter his counter spell that I expect? Like, do we want the Ashek so bad? Or do we prefer to have Teferi protected? I honestly think that with both of those, like, we have Teferi, we can kill this Gearhulk, so it won't be a huge problem. And we have Elspeth in worst case if we really need to, like, want to dig for it. So I think we go for this plan to win the game. Because he needs to remove the Teferi. Let's go for double stop in case he has creatures. And by the way, this creature is something I really like. This is a very fun creature. Unfortunately for 6 mana it doesn't like really win the game, as you can see of course. But it's a interesting strong play, let's say. And how much? Okay, we have 7 already, so I can go for this even. The more mana we have, the better. So let's draw a card, because with Teferi we can use Azcanta 2 times every single turn. And let's go for the draw. Like, Azcanta is doing similar thing, but it might come handy. And I think at this point we want to see his hand. And soon he will remember about it. Like, I don't want to highlight this card so he remembers about it. So, yeah. And I'm quite fine with this. Like, I'm not in a hurry. So for sure Azcanta and some blue mana. Oh, and finally he noticed what this card is for. Because it's hindering, except mostly like control matchups. So that's why you take it for games like this. Okay, and we have one absorb set. And let's go for blue. So we can also have Dovin Vito on top of absorb. Okay. He might wait for something instant, but we have a lot of Teferis. And I don't want to slow down. So the enemy might thinking about going like Vraska or Murderous Rider or something like this. Okay, that's interesting play. It's interesting, but still. We get to do pretty much the same thing again. Okay. The enemy is pretty much only counter spell deck. But I think it's more or less okay. We get to have another Teferi.
Keep
and
up the
then
pace.
Liliana when we have enough. And we can still go for the Dovin's Veto. So right now we are trying to outvalue the enemy. Sublime Epiphany. That's something interesting. Like, this is a very good card, it's just super slow and sometimes it's completely dead card. So first let's draw.
We need to
So
move
called
quickly.
no reason not to. This is a very nice draw. And I think at this point we are getting the control over the game. Because we have double counter spell. And I even think we go for the Absorb. Because it either demands the enemy to play another counter spell or we get to see everything. And I think the enemy is out of counter spells. Yeah. So those aren't important. We don't really have... we only have Dream Trawler. So I think at this point let's go for Extinction Event. Yeah, because then Dream Trawler is lethal as well. And Shark Typhoon is a very good card. And we say go. So the enemy is trying to find the answer to Teferi. He doesn't believe he can find it. Yeah, so Teferi is slow, but this is one of the reasons that we wanted all 3 Teferis. Like, this is a lot of stacking for Planewalker, but they will get removed at some point, and when the enemy wins the battle to finally kill the Teferi and you get the next one with plussing and untapping the mana and you can fight again, is just a very devastating. So, and we also got a very good draw for this game.
With